Manx Radio's Update with Beth Espy.
Fastamai, good evening. It's Wednesday the 4th, no it's not, Wednesday the 7th of August, and this is Update on Manx Radio. It's your rundown of what's been happening news-wise today. Coming up in the next half hour, we're going to take a look at the draft local economy strategy. What are the proposals and why was it late? The Isle of Man Green Party says the island needs to move faster in achieving its net zero targets. And could you, yes you, be the Royal Manx Agricultural Show's first ever hobby horse champion? All that. We'll also keep an eye on the roads as well. There were reports of an RTC on the Ballasalla side of the Braid roundabout. If you see anything while you're out and about, 166 177 or email studio@manxradio.com. First, let's join Christian for a rundown of today's main headlines.
A Southern Hundred marshal who was killed during last year's event was fatally injured by metal fencing, which was being used to identify the edge of the course. The inquest into the death of William Clark, who is known as Liam, was concluded at Douglas Courthouse today, with the coroner recording a verdict of accidental death. The Isle of Man's draft local economy strategy has been unveiled with hopes of supporting the retail, hospitality and leisure industries on the island. Key proposals include transforming underutilised spaces and enhancing consumer choice. And the most successful TT rider of all time is going to put his classic racing skills to the test again at the Manx Grand Prix this year. 29-time TT winner Michael Dunlop will take on the classic superbike and lightweight races. In international news now, and it's believed more than 100 far-right protests and 30 counter-demos are planned again this evening. 41 out of 43 police forces in England and Wales say they are expecting events. Tory leadership contender Robert Jenrick has been accused of textbook Islamophobia. The former immigration minister said people shouting Allah Akbar should be immediately arrested. And the UK's highest court says Shamima Begum, who joined Islamic State in 2015, cannot challenge the removal of her British citizenship. Her lawyers could now take their appeal to Europe. Those are your headlines. News in full at 6.
Thanks very much, Christian. Now the weather, brought to you by Manx Glass and Glazing. Mainly cloudy tonight, some brightness breaking through at times, but there will be the risk of 1 or 2 passing showers. A fresh to strong southwest wind, that'll ease this evening as temperatures fall to around 12 Celsius. Not a great one tomorrow. Outbreaks of rain and drizzle arriving from the west overnight and persisting for much of the day, eventually clearing later tomorrow evening. The light southeast wind will freshen throughout the morning, then veer southwest in the afternoon, and best temperatures tomorrow will be around 19. But good news for Friday, a fine day, sunny spells and just isolated showers. Sunset this evening, 4 minutes past 9. Sunrise tomorrow morning, just before 5:45.
Manx Glass and Glazing can supply and install single, double and triple glazing. Call 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate.
TE Cabin provide new memorial stones, grave renovations, new inscriptions and fire hearths. Visit us at Hope Street, Castletown or at Broadway, Douglas, or call 844 440. TE Cabin, here when you need us.
Ambitions Recruitment Consultants, covering all business sectors in the Isle of Man. Register online or email your CV to info@ambitions.co.im or ring 614 841. Ambitions, for all your recruitment needs, however big or small.
We all need peace of mind. That's where Peace of Mind Manx Will Writing Services can help you. From just £149 plus VAT. Call 671 001 or go to peaceofmind.co.im.
Most builders start with a hammer and saw. Manx Construction start with ideas and imagination. For new build, extension or home office, Manx Construction offer full service from planning to completion. Call Tony on 452 688.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
It's 4.5 minutes past 5. A Southern Hundred marshal who was killed during last year's event was fatally injured by metal fencing that was being used to identify the edge of the course. Well, that's what the inquest into the death of William Clark, who's also known as Liam, was told at Douglas Courthouse today. And once again, news editor Tessa Hawley was there for Manx Radio. And just to remind you that this report may contain information you might find upsetting. So, Tessa, first of all, this brings to a close 2 inquests this week then.
It does. If you were listening yesterday, you'll have heard us talking about the death of motorcycle racer Alan Connor. Both he and Mr Clark were killed during a qualifying session at the 2023 Southern 100. That was back on the 11th of July last year. Now, yesterday, the coroner of inquest recorded a verdict of misadventure at Mr Connor's inquest. And today, the court heard details about what happened to Mr Clark.
And we know that Mr Clark was marshalling on the Castletown bypass on the night that he died. Did you hear evidence about how he was fatally injured?
We did. We learnt that Mr Clark, who was 66 and from Wigan, was marshalling at a point called the Pump House. Now, after Mr Connor's machine had collided with newcomer Andrew Smart, his bike hit the safety fencing and then went on to hit a tree and a lamppost which Mr Clark was standing by. Evidence from eyewitnesses was read to the court today. One spectator said he'd watched Mr Clark become tangled up in the railings, which then began concertining. Another spectator said he'd seen Mr Clark in the air and then on the floor. Describing the noise and heat at the scene as intense, he added, "It made me picture a bomb blast." And we know that Mr Clark sadly died at the scene after suffering what a pathologist described as devastating head, chest and spinal injuries.
So was the area that Mr Clark was marshalling at known to be a high-risk area?
No, not at all. So the clerk of the Blount Circuit and the clerk of the TT course both told the inquest today that the bypass had never been deemed a high-risk area. Effectively, they'd had no real prior concerns. They said that the metal fencing had simply needed to be there to differentiate between the edge of the course and the restricted area behind it. But the court heard that following this double fatality, this has now been reviewed. And as a result of what happened on that night, it's now been made a prohibited area, meaning no one can access it. We also know that new water-filled barriers are now being used instead of the metal fencing.
So what did the coroner conclude in this case?
Coroner of Inquest James Brooks said Mr Clark would have had little to no time to react to Mr Connor's bike hitting the barriers and then the tree and that lamppost. It is at this point the disruption became devastation, he told the court. Offering his condolences to Mr Clark's wife, Coroner Brooks said despite the associated risks with motorsport events, Mr Clark was not undertaking an inherently risky part of his role at the time of his death.
Tessa, thank you very much indeed. And you can find that full report at manxradio.com. It's coming up to 8 minutes past 5, and the Isle of Man Green Party would like to see the Isle of Man move faster in achieving its net zero goals. Well, that's a message from the party's secretary, Andrew Langan-Newton, who was on Manx Radio's Man in Line programme at lunchtime. He told Andy Wint government needed to lead the way on climate action and work harder to reach a range of targets.
I was on Manx Radio maybe in the last 3 or 4 weeks in response to something Chief Minister, Minister Cannon, had said about postulating or just flirting with the idea that we might not hit our 2030 target. And we were, in the Green Party, very concerned with that. We see there's been so many positives to net zero, and we should be aspiring to do it quicker than 2030. The 2030 target, 35% reduction in carbon emissions from the baseline.
There are about 3 targets, aren't there? There's one for 2050 as well. What are the targets?
You might say there's 4 targets. So there's a government target of decarbonising our electricity supply by 2030. Then there is the legal target under the Climate Change Act 2021, the interim target, first one, 2030, that's a 35% reduction from our baseline emissions. And then the 2035 is the 45% reduction, and then the 2050 net zero target.
Okay. How far are we along the line?
Well, I think the government updated its net zero website very recently with the 2022 figures for our emissions. So obviously it's difficult to say where we are in the middle of 2024, but we could look out in Douglas now from where we are on a vantage point on Douglas Head and see there's so many public buildings where the government have promised solar panels and we still don't see them. So on a prima facie view, face value view, we're seeing little progress.
That is the Secretary for the Isle of Man Green Party, Andrew Langan-Newton, who was on Man and Line at lunchtime. You can watch that back, actually, that programme, if you go to Manx Radio's website or our Facebook page. It's coming up to 5:10. OK, so the draft local economy strategy aimed at boosting the Isle of Man's retail, hospitality and leisure sectors has been released, and this is after a substantial delay. Business Isle of Man's key proposals hope to transform vacant spaces, encourage entrepreneurship and enhance consumer choice. And Christian Jones joins us now, and Christian's been looking into this in more detail. And first of all, Christian, it is overdue, first of all.
Yeah, it is indeed. 8 months late, actually. It was originally promised to be brought forward in December. And when I asked those questions to the Minister earlier this year, he told me it was because there was so much consultation happening and he wanted to make sure the document was fully informed. However, Business Isle of Man's chief executive told me it was actually because of the cost of living and what he describes as constant heat facing the sectors. So they couldn't actually garner an accurate picture of what needed to be done in the long term.
So let's just look at the data that's gone into this strategy for a moment. More than 1,200 survey respondents, amongst other things. Yeah, 1,250 survey responses to the local economy high street survey, more than 60 interviews with underrepresented groups too, which is basically older people. The Department for Enterprise said there was a gap in the survey responses, which is why they did those targeted additional interviews. But those responses actually highlighted some fairly blunt data. For example, the average rating of the retail offering is only 1.9 out of 5 stars. OK, I just want to bring the Business Isle of Man Chief Executive Tim Cowsall in here just to respond to those findings.
It's clear that there is, that the people do expect a certain amount of variation for the island, and I think those aspirations are built into the fact that local communities feel the same. You've got local commissioners and town groups wanting to push that and offer those services, and you've seen some great businesses trying to fill those gaps. So I think it's a great start for us to look at how we can change. And with us continually looking at how this adjusts, I expect those figures to go up, but if they're not going up, we can adjust that as well. Without that input, you'll keep the emphasis on, are we going in the right direction? We know that the Isle of Man has weathered the storm extremely well, but the opportunity for growth is absolutely there.
That is Business Isle of Man's Chief Executive Tim Cowsall. Now, we also have information from the local data company. This is a UK-based research organisation which visited the Isle of Man late last year to conduct analysis of the makeup of the island's high streets, and also some other UK-based consultancy firm to carry out a town audit. And from what we've been told, Christian, I understand both of these cost around £40,000 to complete. Am I right? Yeah, £40,000 for the both of them. And while we're on the topic of cost, we know that there are various funds being explored in this strategy. The Town and Regeneration Fund, the Domestic Event Fund, Business Energy Saving Scheme, and also a creation of a local economy fund. But what we don't know is how much is going to be allocated, which is interesting because the document is claimed to have been developed with extensive research and is comprehensive, but the Minister seemingly doesn't know the details or have a ballpark figure either. We do know that the department does expect to be going to Treasury for additional funding, though. OK, and just finally, this is an elaborate, a long-awaited document, as we've been hearing. Have we had any reaction, any political reaction to it yet? We have. Douglas South MHK Claire Christian has recently told us, in short, there remains considerable work to be done. She goes on to say that I recognise the efforts of the Department for Enterprise in striving to engage stakeholders throughout this process. This collaboration is of paramount importance, she says, and I look forward to seeing more defined actions and timelines in the final strategy. But she closes with a caveat that swifter, bold action is needed. Christian Jones, thank you very much indeed. Much more on this at manxradio.com, and of course we'll bring you more comment and reaction from those making up the local economy industries as soon as we have it. It is 14 minutes past 5. Let's turn our attention to business, brought to you by Ramsey Crookall. Some good news, actually. Manx the Lottery Trust has given a grant to the Isle of Man Sub-Aqua Club to enhance their scuba diving training programmes. Now, this funding is going to enable the island's oldest scuba club to get essential equipment and offer free training sessions to young people during the winter. And Lee Morris from the club says the grant will significantly expand their capabilities and inspire the next generation of divers. Stephen Turner is the chair of the Manx Lottery Trust, and he says, "We are delighted to support the club's efforts in promoting scuba diving and engaging the community." He adds this initiative not only promotes a love for the ocean, but also helps build a sustainable, skilled diving community on the Isle of Man. Now, the stock market report brought to us by Ramsey Crookall, and they tell us that US stocks extended a rebound from recent sell-offs. Stocks are showing another strong move to the upside during trading today. The major averages have all moved sharply higher, with the tech-heavy Nasdaq leading that charge. Gold inched up slightly towards $2,400 per ounce today. That's due to the Fed expectations and increased tensions in the Middle East. US crude oil inventories tumbled much more than expected. That was because of the Energy Information Administration, which released a report today showing crude oil inventories in the US fell by more than expected in the week ending August the 2nd. At 429.3 million barrels, the US crude oil inventories are about 6% below the 5-year average for this time of year. And in corporate news, Walt Disney stocks fell almost 3% after the entertainment giant reported a drop-off in profits at its experiences segments. So that includes parks and consumer products. The latest then from the commodities. Gold currently stands up 0.4% at $2,398, and Brent crude stands up 3.37 at $78.64. The latest, the close from the FTSE 100, it was up 1.74% at 8,166. The Nasdaq a short time ago was up 1.05% at 39,407, and the Nasdaq up 1.79% at 16,661.
I'm running late again. Do you know where I put my car keys?
In the fridge.
Where's my phone?
Under the dog basket.
Bye.
You haven't forgotten that we're seeing Ramsey Crookall later?
Oh, no, of course not. 5 p.m, is it?
2:45.
I'll be there.
Life is busy. That's why Ramsey Crookall's team takes time to help you make a mindful investment decision, considering all the options, giving you full control of your financial future. Less stress, more assurance.
Forgot to put my shoes on.
See how we can make your money work for you. Call 717171 or visit ramseycrookall.com. Licensed and regulated by the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
Now, first of all, we've got unconfirmed reports that the Peel Road from St John's to Peel has been closed by police. Thank you so much for texting in and letting us know about that. We don't know any details, but there does seem to be that police road closure at Tynwald Inn heading towards Peel, so just be aware of that. A little earlier, again, a listener texted in to say there'd been an RTC on the Ballasalla side of the Braid roundabout. We understood at that point, and again, it wasn't confirmed by police, that the road was passable, but again, just be careful if you're out and about there. And the other thing happening this week, the Mountain Road is due to close every evening. That's from 6:30 p.m. until 10 p.m. for maintenance work. That closure will be in place from Barrule Park, Ramsey to Craignabar. All looking okay down at the airport and the steam packet.
Ask how you can spread the cost interest-free at
Quayside.
It is 18 minutes past 5. A man who sexually assaulted a teenager on a bus has been jailed for 2 years and 9 months. Siobhan Fletcher has this report from BBC Isle of Man.
38-year-old Craig Tia groped the 18-year-old after moving to the seat next to her on the 14th of May. Douglas Courthouse heard the bus was about 2/3 empty when he sat practically on top of her before attacking her. Deemster Graham Cook said Tia's actions were abhorrent and had been devastating for the victim. The court heard Tia of Crossag Close in Ballasalla had boarded the bus after the victim at around 6:40 p.m. and had sat down in the seat in front of her. Shortly afterwards, he moved to the seat opposite her and asked if she wanted to buy some cocaine, which she declined. He then moved her bag off the seat next to her and sat on it, introducing himself and shaking her hand, leaning in to kiss the side of her face as he did. The court heard he then went on to sexually assault her, with the incident captured on the vehicle's CCTV. The victim got up and moved further down the bus, sitting next to another passenger who she asked to pretend to know her, but was followed by Tia, who sat opposite them. She told the younger man what had happened by writing a message on her mobile phone and sharing it with him, and he advised her to stay civil with Tia for the time being. She then took a picture of her attacker on her phone before the 38-year-old took her number and began messaging her. A short time later, the victim got off the bus accompanied by the young man, but again was followed by Tia, who continued to pester her and send her messages that ended with kisses. She went to a nearby pub where she knew the landlord and told him what had happened, and the assault was reported to the police. The court heard Tia, who had been drinking and had taken cocaine prior to the assault, was also on probation for benefit fraud. In a victim impact statement read to the court, she said the assault had made her feel sick and she was now unable to use public transport because she experienced panic attacks. Jailing Tia, Deemster Cook, said, "You have had a devastating effect on this young girl."
That is Siobhan Fletcher with a report from BBC Isle of Man. 5:20, we can bring you more details about what is happening out west with that road closure. Police have confirmed a road closure is in place from Tynwald Hill at St John's, closing the entire A1 main road. That's through to QE2 and up to Queen's Drive in Peel. Officers are dealing with a road traffic collision and it is likely, they say, that this road will be closed for some time. So if you're heading to Peel or out of Peel, you can go via the Portown Road. So that's just a confirmation that there is a road closure in place from Tynwald Hill at St John's, closing the entire A1 main road through to QE2 and up to Queen's Drive in Peel. 5:21. So could you be the next Royal Manx Agricultural Show's hobby horse champion? In fact, you would be the first hobby horse champion. This class is new for this year's event and it's taking place at Knockalo Farm in Patrick on Friday and Saturday. Manx Radio Countryside's Kiri Kermode asked show president Suzanne Corlett and First Secretary Carol Kenyuk about this latest edition and how the preparations are going.
Entries are encouraging. Given the spring that we had, I left it as late as possible because nobody wanted to see a prize list popping through the door. No, entries are on a par with previous years, and it's very encouraging to see some new names in the catalogue this year.
And that's what makes it, isn't it? Getting the young farmers, young people encouraged and to get involved. And it's, as much as it is a competition, it's still a friendly competition.
I think so. I'd like to think so. No, it is, and anybody would help anybody out. But just seeing these younger people coming through and following on, after generations of families showing, and some perhaps from families who haven't shown before, it's so encouraging, and this is what we do it for.
And this year you've brought another raft of judges over from the UK.
We have, yes, all of our judges are from the UK for our livestock. And that, again, it just gives everybody the opportunities to have a fair competition. And the exhibitors like to have judges from the UK, so there's no favouritism, there's no I know him, he knows her. It just makes it an easier day.
And Suzanne, there's a new class in the horse side of the show as well this year.
Yes, on the Friday at 3 o'clock, we're running a hobby horse competition sponsored by Country Warehouse. We're going to hold different heats for different ages from 7 and under up to adults.
Oh, cool.
And then the final will be on the Saturday in the main arena where they'll all have their little chance to run off for the championship, yeah.
That'll be really good because I've seen some of it online and it looks quite competitive.
It's a very big event now, very big. And actually we can qualify to go to the BSPS Championships in the UK.
Oh my word,
yeah.
So everything to
everything's
run
play
for then, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So is the hobby horses here for people to use?
We
or?
will have, but if you've got your own, bring your own. But we have got quite a few, or brush handles, anything really, if they're short. Because we're hoping to run a Grand National on the Saturday and have I think some of the rugby teams are quite interested.
Oh, what a great way to get involved with it. And that's what the show's all about, isn't it? It's just getting everybody here to have a good time.
It is, and hopefully the kids will really enjoy that, yeah.
That is the show president for the Royal Manx Agricultural Show, Suzanne Corlett, and before that we heard from Carol Kenyock. That latest addition to the class, the hobby horse class, sounds absolutely brilliant. So if you've got a broom handle knocking around, you know where to go this Friday or Saturday. 23 minutes past 5, just want to remind you that there is a road closure in place from Tynwald Hill at St John's along the entire A1 main road through to QE2 and up to Queen's Drive in Peel. Officers are currently dealing with a road traffic collision, and they tell us that the road is going to be closed for some time. If you're going in or out of Peel, you can go along the Portown Road. And thank you to everybody who's texted 166 177 to let us know about that. Hobby horses then, Rob Pritchard, is that a sport you could get into?
Do you know what? I'd only seen videos about this the other day, and it's I can't remember in which nation it was, but it's massively popular. Seeing the footage of when they actually they take part in these, they have stands full of people as well. Who'd have known?
Who would have known? I should say a couple of years ago, Christy and I took part in a hobby horse championships, and I was no good. The jumps are quite difficult. Anyway, as you were.
But you never know. That could have been the early days of the sport. You could have been the foundation, and it's spread across the world.
Could have ruined it as well, but anyway. Anyway, sport this evening.
Indeed. Well, we'll start with motorsport, and the King of the Mountain himself, Michael Dunlop, has once again been confirmed to be taking part in this month's Manx Grand Prix. The 35-year-old, who this year became the most successful TT rider of all time with 29 victories in total, will contest the lightweight and classic superbike races in 2024. He'll line up on his own MD Racing 250 Honda for the lightweight event, but for the first time in more than a decade, he won't be part of Team Classic Suzuki in the classic superbike event. Instead, this year, he'll pilot a 916 Ducati. He has 5 victories in the classic superbike race to date, including topping the standings last year. Interestingly, despite podiums for it in 1995 and 96 at the TT, the Ducati machine is yet to win around the Snaefell Mountain course. Anyway, the 2024 Manx Grand Prix is due to take place from the 18th to the 26th of August. Elsewhere, the fixtures for the 2024-25 Isle of Man football season have now been confirmed. The Isle of Man FA has announced the schedule of matches for all senior men's clubs across the Premier League, Division 2, Combination 1 and Combination 2 for the latest upcoming campaign. The first league fixtures of the new season will take place on Saturday, the 31st of August, and currently run up to Saturday, the 15th of March 2025. There is then contingencies throughout the season should matches need to be rearranged. Well, among the opening week's ties in the top flight, I should say, defending champions Ayr United will host Laxey. There's a Western derby as Peel hosts St John's United, and last season's Division 2 champions Foxdale are at home to Russian United. Well, you can see all the opening day fixtures as well as the key dates for cup competitions to have the new campaign at manxradio.com. And finally, in martial arts, 2 Isle of Man Jiu-Jitsu competitors have claimed 5 medals between them whilst competing out in the USA. Hayley Curtis and Alan Greenhalgh of Summit Grappling Academy, formerly known as Gracie Barra, contested the IBJJF New York Jiu-Jitsu Open held last weekend. Senior squad member Curtis would go on to claim 4 medals personally, 3 gold and 1 silver, whilst junior competitor Greenhalgh impressed to secure gold in his tournament. Well, Summit Grappling Academy head coach Conrad Roberts is describing the trip for the club as incredibly successful, adding, "The wins show that the Isle of Man very much still deserves to be there at the international level."
Oh, thank you very much indeed, Rob. There's a lovely photograph on the Manx Radio Sports page of the winners there. They look so pleased and rightly deserved.
Absolutely. Cracking view of Broadway as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you very much indeed. That is all from Update this evening. Just remember that the A1 Peel Road is closed from Tynwald Inn at St John's all the way through to QE2 and just up to Queen's Drive, so be aware of that if you are heading home. Coming up next this evening, it's Spotlight with Howard Kane. Then Chris Kinley is back in the hot seat, looking very bronzed, it has to be said. He'll have greatest hits for you from 6. Andy Wint has your weekly country music fix from 9, and then Rianne will be here with you from 10 p.m. with After Hours. And just a reminder that, as ever, if there's a news story happening in your community, good or not so good, we'd love to hear from you. newsroom@manxradio.com is the best email address. Breakfast with Ben will be back from 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. I'll be here from 5 p.m. tomorrow evening. Whatever you're doing for the rest of the night, have a good one.